Hey folks, how you doing? Glad to be back with you. I'm going to talk about the divine word. It is called the Medu Neter. Okay? Where the Medu means word, and Neter means divine. But some have interpreted the word Neter to mean a god, but there's a great distinction, a huge distinction between the word Neter and the word God relative to the function of each. Okay? And I think I should make that clear now because so we have a better understanding of Neter. In God, the concept of God, as we have been taught, anyway, I've been taught, is that God is the caller. He calls all the actions. Okay? And God, as we hear about God up there in heaven, okay, says that he'll punish you if you believe in another God. He'll punish you if you violate certain laws. So God is in total command. Okay? But when it comes to Neter, it's different. In fact, Neter doesn't say anything. Neter doesn't think. Neter doesn't make determinations or make decisions. The human does. And the human, in his prayers or rituals or spiritual exercises, seeks to control the Neter. You see? It's like he tells Neter what to do. In other words, the human seeks to control the forces of energy within himself. Those who practice, certain spiritual exercises, they want to control the energy within themselves and thereby control themselves. You see? But the other folks, with the God's interpretation, seeks to be controlled by God. Not the other way around. They don't, seek to control God. So this is the big difference between the two. Okay? People want to evoke the Neter. They're invoking certain forces of energy within themselves so that they can perhaps undertake a task successfully. So anyway, the Medu Neter. We're talking about now, remember, the Neter doesn't think, okay? So we go back to our ancestors, okay? And when they came on board on Earth, you know what I mean? They didn't have a verbal language. They made a few sounds maybe. Ooch, ow, a few grunts, something like that. But they learned to communicate as time went by imitating animal sounds. And the sound of the lion, the sound of the zebra or the rhinoceros or whatever. They learned these sounds, and especially the baboon. They called him Cynocephalus, a dog-headed ape. Is the baboon. And these people learned sounds from the baboon, sounds that are still made by certain people today in this world. Right here. The so-called clicking or clucking sound. There's some people, hunters and gatherers in Africa, use these sounds today. And they used other animal sounds, of course, and especially when they went hunting. But they had a whole language, you know what I mean, from these animals, so that when they went hunting, they could use these sounds, or the animal language, if you want to call it that. So they imitated animal sounds, and this is how they start communicating. They still didn't have a verbal language, you know. But we have a Kimite god called Thoth, or Thoth. The Greeks called him Thoth, or he could be called Tut. Really, it's the same thing. Okay. And it is said that Tut is the teacher of language to the humans. Or maybe we should say it is communication skills. But we also see that Tut, okay, is associated with the baboon. You see. Now, the baboon is one of the first teachers of communication to the human. Remember the sound that the baboon makes? You know what I mean? The dog-headed ape, cynocephalus. Well, Tut represents this. When they say he taught humans how to speak, he's representing the dog-headed ape, because that was the teacher. The old folks imitated this animal. Okay, and a few others, a lot of others too, you know. So now, this is how we get started with the language thing, hence the Medu, the words. So when the humans got around to putting animals in the constellations, okay, when they got around to doing that, it was called, they called them gods, they called them netters or whatever. Okay, but they represent forms of energy. So now, because they were called gods or netters, we get the divine word. Because these animals placed in the constellations represented sounds, okay? Because the humans copied the sounds off of these animals, imitated these animals, you see. And so we get the divine word. Because the animals were later referred to as netters or gods or whatever. And so the sounds they made became divine because the creature they gave him a place in the sky. You see? And so we get the divine word. So these divine words had no verbal meaning. They weren't verbally defined. So they later got around to calling them words of power. Okay. Because these very sounds were used by people to evoke forces of energy within themselves. These sounds had no verbal meaning. Even today, these sounds are made when people do their spiritual exercises. Sound of a lion, sound of a hippopotamus, or whatever. They use these old sounds because they have no verbal meaning. Well, why is that? Why no verbal meaning? Because the early humans, okay, didn't have a cerebral cortex. They didn't think. They didn't have the verb situation going for them as people do today. So when people do their spiritual exercises, they want to get into the state of mentality that the ancient folks was in. Because when they do their spiritual exercises, folks today, they shut down the thinking process. Because thinking will interfere, because the ancient ancestors didn't think, and people want to get into the state of mind that those ancient ancestors was in. So they don't think. They shut the thinking process down when they're doing their spiritual exercises. You see? And so, thinking interferes with this simply because the ancient folks didn't think. So we must not think when we're doing certain exercises. Okay. So if they didn't think, they say, well, how did they survive? You know what I mean? Well, yeah, a lot of animals survive without thinking. Okay? But they had instincts, you know. They had the pineal gland and so forth and so on. So they had their senses. They had maybe 6 senses. They might have had more than 5. They probably did, because there was no cerebral cortex. Okay. And when the cerebral cortex came along, people stopped using their instincts. They started thinking more and making more mistakes. They weren't going by the facts. They stopped and they started thinking. Some say the heck with the facts. Yeah, I heard them say that. Well, anyway, the pineal gland played an extraordinary role. And would today, if it was fully activated, wow, it would be great. But those folks back in those days, I would say, had probably a fully activated pineal gland. Less calcification, you know what I mean? And it was very active for these folks. That's what brought the folks through. You see what I mean? The third eye is what I'm talking about. Okay, their third eye was far more active than folks today. As a matter of fact, when people do their spiritual exercise, what they want to do is awaken the third eye. And that takes them back to our ancient ancestors when they're able to do that. Okay, which I imagine some folks do, you know. So now we get an idea of the divine word, where it came from, etc. It has nothing to do with the God up there in heaven. It has to do with our ancient ancestors. This is all folks' ancient ancestors, not just the Africans, everybody. Even though it began in Africa, but everybody on the planet has African ancestry. Everybody. Okay, folks. Nice talking to you. And I hope we got a little understanding about the divine word. Yeah, pretty interesting, huh? Okay, have a good day, folks, and subscribe, and I'll get back with you later. All right, bye.